back into our series tonight, and we're in Proverbs still, and Proverbs chapter 18 this evening. Proverbs chapter 18. And we are going to, I knew we'd have a couple of the kids in here still. Next week, Awana starts again, so be in prayer for that as well. But with Awana still being 1 week off. So as I was looking over some of the subjects that I wanted to cover in the book of Proverbs, I couldn't get away from friendship. Because the book of Proverbs has a lot to say about friendship. And friendship is one of those truths that all of us need. And I think a lot of times we look at kids and we say, man, kids really need to know about friendship. And absolutely they do. So that's why this is a very appropriate lesson and subject matter for our young people who are here with us tonight. But it's also applicable for all of us in this room. Doesn't matter how old or young you are, we need friends. Now here's one reality. We know there's different types of people in the world, right? You have different personality types, and there are two key personality types, introverts and extroverts, right? Introverts and extroverts. And we got a room full of both tonight. Myself, I'm an extrovert. I like to get out there and make friends with everybody. I am energized when I get around people. I love it, right? But then there's the other type. You might describe them as a hermit, right? A hermit is a person living in solitude. A definition of a hermit is someone who likes to be alone, right? I don't like to be alone. Like, I want to be around people. I enjoy that. But then there's other people, like my wife. It's a prime example. I don't think she cares if I share this. Well, it's too late now. I already did, right? No. But she's like the opposite of me. I'm like, I love being around people. I'm energized. She's like, I'm scared to death to be around a bunch of people all the time and have to speak in front of people. The Lord kind of led her to lead a ladies' retreat for a couple of years. And she knew that God was in it because she hated all the attention. She hated standing in front of people, right? I imagine in this room, we've got a representation of both of those groups. And I don't know which we have more of. Generally, I think more people tend to be introverted, than extroverted. But what happens is when we come to interpreting any sort of life practice, like friendship, we interpret what friendship ought to look like based on our personality and how we feel about things. Okay, so for me, as an extroverted person, I'm going to interpret friendship and what friendship should look like a lot different than somebody who's a hermit or somebody who's very introverted, somebody who really enjoys just having 2 or 3 close friends, and that's all they need, and they're happy for the rest of their life. And then there's me. I'm an extroverted person. Like, I want thousands of friends. I consider all of you in this room my best friends. If you ask me, how many friends do you have? Literally, I don't know, thousands of friends. Everyone I've ever met in my life is my friend. Right? You ask Heather how many friends she has, she'll list off like 12 people. It's like there's just different people. How you think about friendship is going to be different, right? And all of you, again, you can all relate either to the one extreme or the other. But I'm not going to give you an extroverted person's take on friendship. That really wouldn't be fair to Scripture and what we're called to do tonight here at church, all right? I don't want you guys to be like me. We'd be in a world of trouble. I also don't want to give an introverted perspective. I want to give everyone here the Bible's perspective on friendship. So I've entitled tonight's message The Friendship Dilemma. The Friendship Dilemma. And it is a dilemma because there are so many opinions and so many perspectives on what friendship should look like and what things we should value in a friendship and what things are bad in a friendship. And so the best thing to do always is to dive into Scripture and see exactly what God says. So look with me, if you would, at our source text, Proverbs 18, verse 24. Proverbs 18, 24. I love this verse. It's a good one. It's a good place to start. A man that hath friends must show himself friendly, and there is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. And that's an allusion to Christ. That's in reference to Christ as well. But it's also a truth that we're going to talk about in a moment of what a good quality friend ought to look like. But I want to start with this thought tonight first. I want to start with this. Why is it so hard to find good friends? Think about it. Why is it so hard? Because, you run into so many people. And, again, you could maybe be in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and you're like, man, I'm just looking for that best friend. I'm still just looking for a quality friendship. I have a lot of friends, but they're all just superficial friends. I'm looking for something deeper, something genuine, something real. And a lot of people really struggle to find that good friendship, right? Why is it so hard? And again, I believe that God in his wisdom, he shows us some reasons. I want to share some thoughts with you that I've gathered from Scripture, just some principles, and then we're going to look specifically at some proverbs on what makes a good friend, right? But first of all, consider this. Some people lack friendship because they don't want to be the one who initiates friendship. Some people lack friendship because they don't want to be the initiator. What do we just read in Proverbs 18:24? A man that hath friends must what? Show himself friendly. But what's the common, and I really love looking to kids whenever I think of these illustrations, because I think all of us adults in this room, we're just big kids. If you think about it, that's really all we are. We're just better at hiding what kids blatantly display, you know? And a lot of kids, you know, I love how most kids really don't have any inhibitions. And when they walk into a playroom, they just walk right over to friends, and they walk right over, and they just make friends immediately. I mean, I'll take my kids to a McDonald's playground, you know, play place. And immediately they're just making connections with kids, and they're going up and down the slide. They're playing tag with them, you know. And then we get a little bit older, you know, and we're too cool for that all of a sudden. I don't know what it is, right? There's that weird transition where when you're a teenager that all of a sudden you become a lot more self-conscious and self-aware. But what's interesting, and you even see it in little kids, is there's a lot of us don't necessarily want to initiate the friendship. We want someone else to come up to us. And that's what's always kind of funny. You see this little dance, you know, that kids have when they first get around each other. And it's just a little bit awkward, you know. This kid's playing over here, and this kid's playing over here. And they kind of slowly start getting a little bit closer, and they're just kind of waiting for the other person to initiate contact, right? Hey, I understand that, you know. I remember when Heather and I first got married, we only had one car, so I had to ride the city bus to work. And if I rode on the city bus, I'd bring a book with me. And even though I'm an extroverted person, it's just like, I don't know who I'm going to meet on the city bus. I'd rather just have an opportunity to look busy. You know, you just never know. But if somebody had a kind face and they're sitting next to me, I was going to initiate contact, right? I wanted to talk to them. That's my personality. But most people, you look like on a city bus or public transit, you know, a lot of places where there's a group of people, what are most people doing? Buried in their phones, pretending to be busy, trying to ignore each other because they don't like that awkward interaction, you know? Unless, what happens? Somebody initiates contact. We're always waiting on somebody else to do it. But the Bible teaches right here, a man that hath friends must show himself friendly. Some people lack good friendship because they are waiting on everyone else to initiate when God says you need to be the one who initiates. Second principle is this. Some people lack friendship because they expect everyone else to change to make the friendship work. I mentioned earlier the two main groups of extroverts and introverts, but ultimately, every single individual in this room, every one of us has a different personality, right? Every one of us has different interests and passions. You know, some here might be passionate about gardening. Some here might be passionate about automobiles. Some here might be passionate about aviation. Somebody might be passionate about food. You know, I'm passionate about food. I love trying new restaurants, right? And so what happens is we're often drawn to people with like interests. But what happens over time? Interests change. People change. And as interests and people change, that's when friendships kind of drift apart, right? And what we end up doing is we end up looking for people just like us. And that's what makes friendship so hard. It's like, I want you to conform to me. I want you to believe like me. I want you to have the same political opinions as me. I want you to have the same hobbies as me. I want you to like the same food as me. It's impossible to find a clone of yourself, right? And honestly, for the best, because we really don't want clones of ourselves. Can you imagine like how horrifying and traumatizing that would be on the world to have clones of ourselves, you know? I joke that I would like to have a clone of myself so I can get more work done, but I know at the end of the day that would be the worst thing possible, right? We know we don't need that. But the reality is a lot of us expect others to kind of conform to us, to be similar to us, and we lack grace. We don't want to change, but we want everyone else around us to conform to us, right? I'm just being really candid, right? That's just kind of a natural comfort zone thing. The third principle is this. Some friendships are bad because they lack loyalty. They lack loyalty. Now, you see this especially with young people, right? Again, let's go back to the playground illustration. I mean, you got these three kids playing together at the McDonald's play place, having the grandest time, and then a new kid walks in the room, right? Something's got to happen. This new kid walks in the room. Is this new kid cooler than this kid? Is this new kid more fun than this kid? because this kid's going to ditch this kid immediately if this kid's more fun, right? There's no loyalty, right, in that friendship. They just met each other like 5 seconds ago. And so they're just looking for a good time, right? They're just looking for somebody else to play tag with, you know? They're looking for somebody else with similar interests to them. And so a lot of friendships end up being very superficial in that way, in that they lack real depth, and therein they lack loyalty. And I am thankful for loyal friendships. I'll say more about loyal friendships in a moment, but I think loyalty is one of the greatest qualities in a friendship. Because how can you call someone a friend if they're ready to betray you or leave you at a moment's notice? That's not a healthy friendship. Those aren't people that I want to surround myself with when they're going to scatter like cockroaches as soon as something intense happens in life. And so a lot of friendships lack loyalty. And I'm not just saying that we need to find loyal people to be in our lives. We also need to be loyal to others. And again, there's a reason for these things, right? Because I mentioned that we don't necessarily want to initiate the friendship. I mentioned that we want everyone else to change, but we don't really want to adapt. I mentioned that there's a lack of loyalty. And the reason those three principles and others exist is ultimately this: friendships are difficult because one or both individuals involved are selfish. Think about it. At the root problem, friendships fail because someone was selfish, right? I mean, think back to childhood friendships. And some in this room, you might still be friends with your best friend when you were in 6th grade. But for most, you're not good friends anymore. You hardly talk to each other. I remember growing up, I was probably in 2nd grade. I was young. And I remember this kid gave me a friendship necklace thing. I was like a puzzle piece or something. And he's like, "You're my best friend." And like, we were friends. I think he misread the situation. Like, we were friends. I didn't think he was my best friend, but he thought we were best friends. So I was like, cool. Because again, I was good with being friends with everybody, you know, but he's like, "You're my best friend." I was like, awesome, great. Here's my friendship necklace. And like, he was moving or I was moving. I can't remember exactly which one was going where. And he gave me this whole thing. It was a really big deal. And then we like never talked again, right? You know, I mean, we were little kids. But adults, again, we're just big kids, aren't we? We do the same thing. We kind of get all caught up in a friendship. We make it a really big deal. But something comes along and divides us. What is it? A difference of opinion. A difference of lifestyle. We want to change to be more like us, and they want us to change to be more like them. We want them to go and do more, and we always feel like we're the ones doing everything for them. And so what ends up happening is selfishness interferes, and we end up having a broken or damaged. Anytime there's a problem in a relationship, it's because someone has made a selfish decision. Think of a couple of biblical examples. Now, this first example is two brothers, Cain and Abel, right? Remember Cain and Abel in the Bible? What happened to Cain and Abel? They were brothers. They brought a sacrifice to the Lord. God accepted one sacrifice, the sacrifice of Abel, and he rejected Cain's sacrifice because it wasn't appropriate, it wasn't what was expected. Cain got jealous. What does Cain do? He literally murders his brother, kills him right there, tries to cover it up. It all broke down because of this selfish jealousy. Cain saw Abel get favor with God. He didn't like it. He murders his own brother. Judas. Think about Judas when he betrayed Jesus, the Son of God. Judas was in Jesus' inner circle, one of his 12 disciples. You could say one of Jesus' best friends. I mean, think about it. You know Jesus had a bunch of friends. But when he's got his 12 disciples, his posse, those are his best buds. Those are his closest friends. Those are the people who really, they know the most about Jesus, and Jesus knows the most about them. And Judas betrayed him for 30 pieces of silver. Why? Selfishness. Jesus wasn't the Messiah he expected him to be, so he figured he'd rather betray him and get some money out of the deal, because he was done with him anyways. Consider the Apostle Paul and Barnabas, if you're familiar with their situation. The Apostle Paul and Barnabas, they traveled together. They planted churches together and preached and presented the gospel together on multiple missionary journeys. But they were divided over the usefulness of a young man named John Mark. And Paul basically said, John Mark is worthless to the ministry. He's a distraction. He's a problem. And basically Paul was looking for somebody a little bit more dedicated. Barnabas is over here, and he's like, no, John Mark is still profitable. We can work with him. We can help him, and he can be good. And the division, the Bible says the contention was so strong between them that they parted ways. Like, these guys were best friends. They traveled together. They lived together. And they had this disagreement over one guy. And this was the Apostle Paul. Early church leaders, Paul and Barnabas. And they both were selfish and allowed their selfishness of opinion to divide them. If we have all these examples in Scripture, and that's just 3, there's many, many more. How many more do we even have represented in this room right now? How many more are we familiar with and aware with in our own lives of different people who, because of selfishness, ruined a friendship and ruined a relationship? So what's the key to a good friendship? Selflessness, not selfishness. In John, so I told you Proverbs 18:24. Let's look there again real quick. Proverbs 18:24 says this: a man that hath friends must show himself friendly, and there is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. A friend who is willing to be selfless enough to lay everything else aside, to say, I am going to be with you no matter what. And then Jesus says in the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verse 13, after it says right here, and there's a friend that sticketh closer than a brother, he says in John 15:13, greater love his life for his friends. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. That's the ultimate sacrifice, isn't it? That's the ultimate depiction of selflessness. But even though we know these truths, even though we know that Jesus demonstrated being the best friend and he demonstrated the best version of selflessness, we still struggle, don't we, to be selfless. Let me do this real quick. Do we have the kids? Do you kids want to come up here real quick and help me with something? You guys want to come up here? You boys, come on up here real quick. Come on, Grayson, Gavin, Michael, come on up here real quick. Come on up here real quick. All right, I want you to stand right there in front of everybody. I got some gifts for you guys, all right? Do you 3 guys consider me your friend? Yeah? Yeah, good enough? Okay, great. Okay, good. Well, then I have some presents for you, okay? I wanted to give you guys some presents real quick, all right? So here's what, I actually picked these rocks out today myself, and I wanted to give you any one of these rocks. You pick one of these rocks. Which one? Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I like that one. It's a little bit different, a little unique. All right, but Gavin, I was going to give you rock, but I had something different for you, okay? So I'm going to give you the gift that I had for you, Gavin. Okay, so Gavin, what I wanted to give you was I wanted to give you 3 pieces of candy. Is that okay? So I was going to give you these three pieces of candy here real quick. And do you guys still consider me your friend? Yeah. Are you a little bit hurt, though, that I gave Gavin 3 pieces of candy and I only gave you guys a little rock? Yeah. Kind of offends you a little bit, right? You like rocks? No. Do you like to eat rocks? I don't need. You don't need, well, I mean, I appreciate that. But this kind of complicates a friendship, doesn't it, a little bit? Like what I just did kind of complicated the dynamic. Like here we all are just kind of hanging out, and I just introduced something that's going to create a little bit of resentment, a little bit of jealousy, and a weird, awkward dynamic because I just showed some real serious partiality to this dude, and I just hooked him up with a bunch of sugar, and I gave these guys like tiny little rocks I found out in the parking lot, you know? Like, that's not a cool deal. And like, these guys were really nice, and I appreciate your kindness to say, yeah, I'll still be your friend, but that's kind of how life works, doesn't it? It's like, oh yeah, you know, I'll still be your friend, but I'm kind of hurt on the inside. But what happens when I continue to abuse this friendship over and over again, right? They're going to grow further and further away. I'm going to start distancing myself from these people because of the way that I treat them. But it's a two-way street here, all right? Maybe I was totally well-meaning because I looked at Grayson and Michael and I was like, these guys are fine. They got plenty of meat on their bones. They don't need more sugar. But poor Gavin over here, he hasn't had good treats in a long time. I'm going to give him something extra special today, you know? So while I might have mishandled the situation, selflessness on their part said, I'm not going to get resentful because this person got blessed more than me. Because think about that too. Whenever we see something like, especially in a church dynamic, you see somebody maybe get treated a little bit better than another person, or seems to get blessed more than somebody else. And even though you don't really want to come out and say like, I don't like that, and I'm kind of jealous, and I'm a little bit mad at you right now because your life's so much better than me. We start having those emotions a little bit. We get a little bit resentful because this person over here's got all the candy, and I just got left with a rock. And in a group setting like this, it's so easy for those silly little divisions, even over 3 pieces of candy, for there to be a wedge driven between us, right? I mean, that's just practical. You can't be in a group of this many people and so many more on a Sunday and not have these silly little moments of contention that just arise naturally. Well, I saw so-and-so give somebody baked goods on Christmas. They didn't give our family baked goods on Christmas. Well, I saw so-and-so, doing this for this person's child or this person's family, but they didn't do anything for me. And I thought we were friends. I thought we were best buds. And we can just allow these little things to start ruminating in our minds, and we can kind of take kind of a journey a little bit down the road and just start assuming things and start assuming, well, I thought they were my friend, but they don't really care about me. And it starts at a young age where things like this happen, and we carry it with us, right? Don't we do that, adults? We carry things that happen in this hurt at a young age with us, and that we used to be best friends, and then he gave me a rock and not candy. We carry it with us. And we have this bitterness for years. And it's silly how petty we can be. But that's why God gives us some more principles. So here's what I'm going to do. I'll give you guys, don't worry, because I want you to be my best friend. So here you go. Here's all this candy for you. Grayson, you don't need candy, so you're fine. I'm just kidding. Here you go. You guys go have a seat. Thank you so much. That's a silly example, right? But it's true. Like, we allow silly little itty-bitty petty things to divide us. And so that's why I'm thankful again for the Proverbs that give us some biblical attributes of a selfless friendship. So let's look real quick. The time remaining, 10, 15 minutes left. I want to look at a couple of biblical attributes of a selfless friendship. So first of all, selfless friends initiate friendship, right? Going back to our source text in Proverbs 18:24, a man that hath friends must what? Show himself friendly. If you want to have friendships in life, you want to have friendships in the church, you've got to be the one willing to do a little bit of work. And I want to say, real quick, I want to just pause and say, I'm thankful for our church right now in this regard. Because it's a biblical principle. I need to bring it up. But our church does an excellent job. We have several people in this room right now and several people in our church who are excellent at initiating contact, making people feel loved and welcomed at Victory Baptist Church. Let's not stop that. Because it's a biblical attribute. What are we to do? We're to be the ones initiating contact. We're to be the ones going out of our way, seeking friendships, seeking to love on people. You want friends in your life? You're looking for that best friend still at Victory Baptist Church? Keep searching till you find them and then find some more. Just keep going out of your way to love on people. And I'm so thankful that our church does such a good job of openly loving on people. Anyone who walks through those doors, that's a good thing. Keep that up. The second thing is this: selfless friends love you even in the hard times. Turn to Proverbs 17:17. You might not even need to turn. It might be on the same page. Proverbs 17:17. Selfless friends love even in the hard times. Proverbs 17:17 says, a friend loveth at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. We've all gone through hard times, right? We've all had seasons of our life that were very overwhelming, maybe even traumatizing, and it's always comforting to know you have a friend who is going to stand with you even in the most turbulent of life's situations. And unfortunately, sometimes it's when trauma happens, and sometimes it's when tragedy strikes that we discover who our real friends are, right? Because there might be someone that you really thought was there for you, and then all of a sudden you start going through a hard time, and they are nowhere to be found. And then kind of what I found, out of nowhere, you have other friends start kind of arising that come alongside you to comfort you and help you. And I know for me, there's been multiple times in my life, if I was going through a time of depression in ministry, and I've shared with you before how there was a season in my ministry where I was a little depressed because some things that were happening with an individual in the church that was just really attacking me, and it was getting to me, it really was. And I had friends that stuck with me and that supported me and that encouraged me through the whole thing. I'm thankful for it. I had a dear friend who, he messed up big time. He messed up big time. He messed up his marriage. He was selfish. He was dumb. And I remember hearing about that and hearing that he was actually in ministry, so he lost his job. His wife had left. His world was just ruined. Now, again, it was his fault. It was totally his fault. But when I found this out, I gave him a call, and I just said, listen, obviously, I don't support what you did, but I do want you to know I'm praying for you, and I'm trying to encourage you. And here I was thinking I was being a good friend. You know, I was trying to be a good friend. And then I found out, he tells me, actually, we had another mutual friend. He's like, actually, so-and-so invited me to come live with them for a little bit, and they've been a real help to me. And even though his own family had basically kicked him out, and again, rightfully so, he had done something really dumb, it was just nice to know that he had a friend that wasn't, and here's the difference, he wasn't enabling him in his sin. He wasn't saying, hey, yeah, just keep doing this thing. He was saying, hey, I'm here for you to help you get out of this mess you made. Because the reality is we're all really capable of making big messes, aren't we? But I'm thankful that every time I made a big mess, there was always somebody there to help me back up. That's what a good, selfless friend looks like. And as children of God, we need to practice that attribute. Proverbs 17, I just read it. A friend loveth at all times. Even when embarrassing themselves, right? A friend loveth at all times. That's what selfless friendship looks like. The third principle is in Proverbs 17, verse 9. Selfless friends forgive and forget. Now, this is a hard one. But look at Proverbs 17, verse 9. It says, he that covereth a transgression seeketh love, but he that repeateth a matter separateth very friends. That's not talking about the perpetrator. It's talking about the friend of the perpetrator. So if you know your friend did something really bad, a bad friend does what? They keep rubbing it in their face and they keep reminding them of their failure. Because who here really likes to be reminded of their failure, you know? Hey, remember that time you embarrassed yourself really bad? Oh, yeah, that was great. Like, I like to do that to some of my best friends. I think it's kind of fun every once in a while, you know? But no, like a good friend, though, they know what sore wounds you have. And they're not going to reopen that wound and pour salt on it. That's not what a good friend does. Because look again at verse 9. It says, he that covereth a transgression seeketh love. Hey, if I know you did something dumb, but I know you're trying to do better, I'm not going to keep reminding you of it because I love you. But the second part of the verse, but he that repeateth the matter, and that's not talking about, again, the perpetrator like repeating it. It's talking about if I were to remind you of what you did, and I'm repeating back to you what you did, it separateth very friends. So if I'm just going to constantly remind you of all the mistakes that you made, I'm not healing our friendship, and I'm not showing love to you. I'm driving a wedge between us. Now listen, you've probably been friends with somebody for a long time, and maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, they did something really dumb. Maybe they did something really hurtful, and you've been struggling to forgive them for it. What the Bible teaches here is that we don't need to keep bringing up the past, especially when that person is seeking to make things right. We need to be willing to bury it. That's why it says when it covers a transgression. Because, you know, God doesn't remind us of our sin, does he? And I'm thankful for that. God doesn't wake me up every single morning and say, hey, Tim, remember when you did this 2 years ago? Remember when you did this 2 weeks ago? Hey, remember all your past failures and the miserable things that you did? Yeah, remember everything? He doesn't do that to me. What has God done? He has forgiven my sin. He has... See, that's what God did for me. And we're to follow that example, which means we need to be willing to bury transgressions. And say, I'm going to put that to rest. It's in my mind, it's dead. Let's bury it in the grave. It's covered over. Let's not talk about it anymore. That's good friendship. That's somebody who seeks love. The fourth principle is this. Selfless friends always make their friend's life better. Turn to Proverbs chapter 27. Proverbs 27, there towards the end. Selfless friends always make their friend's life better. Proverbs 27, verse 9 says this, ointment and perfume rejoice the heart. So doth the sweetness of a man's friend by hearty counsel. Hearty counsel. That's somebody who's coming alongside you, not to tear you down, but to build you up and help you be a better person. And again, part of that is not reminding you of your past failure, but saying, hey, here's how we can be better today. Then Proverbs chapter 27, skip down to verse 17. Proverbs 27:17 is a classic verse, isn't it? Iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. Good friendships always make you better. What we don't need are friends who keep dragging us down. We don't need to be the type of friend, and we don't need to surround ourselves with types of friends who make us a worse version of ourselves. And again, we all know people like this. And truthfully, it could be a coworker, it could be a family member, it could just be a neighbor, it could be somebody in your life that every time you're around them, man, they bring you back to a version of yourself that should have died a long time ago. They bring you back to a version of yourself that should have been put to death when you started following Jesus Christ as your Savior. And they make you a worse, lesser version of yourself. What we need to do is surround ourselves with the types of friends who will strengthen us and make us better people. That's what the Bible's teaching us. Iron sharpeneth iron. And that's why I'll say our best friends must be good Christians. I'm not saying now, I want to be careful with that statement. I'm not saying we can't be friends with lost people or unspiritual people. I'm not saying that. But your best friend, the person who influences you the most, the person you're closest to, the person who knows the most about you, ought to be a born-again believer who is as passionate or more passionate about God than you are. Why? Because, what do we tell kids? You are who you're around, right? You're going to end up like you're just like your friends. Your friends paint a picture of who you are on the inside. Because who you hang out is who you hang around is who influences you. And so, same goes for us as adults. If we're never surrounding ourselves with godly, spiritual people, and all those church folk, those aren't my friends. No, my friends are these guys over here. Who's influencing us? I'm saying as adults even, we've got to be mindful of who we're allowing to influence us. And I'm not trying to dig right now. I'm not trying to hurt people, but we have to be mindful. I have seen marriages ended because one of the spouses got around somebody at work and they started drifting spiritually. They started changing because they got this new friend group. Again, this new friend group was kind of drawing them back to an old lifestyle and an old version of themselves, and it severed the relationship even in the marriage between the spouse because the spouse was over here trying to pursue Christ where this spouse got the wrong friends. And I'm talking about 30, 40-year-old adults. This message might sound like something like, oh, yeah, you should just preach that to the kids and the teenagers. But I have seen it happen with grown adults, with careers in committed marriages, who allow a bad friendship to draw them away from Christ. We need individuals in our life who sharpen us, who are willing to call us out when we're doing something really dumb, who are willing to stand by us when we're growing and making a fool of ourselves. Here's the fifth one real quick. I need to be done soon. Turn back to Proverbs chapter 18. Our source verse again. Selfless friends are loyal. I told you I was going to say a little bit more about loyalty. In Proverbs 18:24, the second half of the verse, it says, there's a friend that sticks closer than a brother. Now, we know that family, we're stuck with them no matter what, right? You can revoke the rights and say, you're not my mom and dad anymore, you're not my sibling anymore, but by blood, you're always going to be related, right? You can't separate that. But I'm sure many of you know this is true. There are friends out there who can be closer to you than your own blood relatives. People in your life, and I would even say this with Hunter and Cameron who are here, they're like family to me. These are some young people that grew up in our youth group and that have been a part of me and Heather's life for literally years. And these are people who we have grown close enough that we are literally like family now. And they're like family to my children and family to Heather and family to me. And I'm sure that you have friendships like that as well. We have friends that our kids refer to as aunt and uncle. And we're not blood related, but they call them aunt and uncle because we have that tight-knit relationship. That's a loyal friendship, a friendship that is not superficial, a friendship that is deep. And I'm not saying that everybody in our church has to be best buds, but man, we should be looking for those types of friendships here at church amongst each other. Because we live in a wicked, wicked, corrupt world that's only getting worse. And the world, they're making Christians, they're making us in this room here, making us the enemy. The world does not want the message that we have from God's word. The world, the wicked pagan world, does not want their lifestyle to be defined as sin. And so they hate our message, and therefore they hate us. And that's exactly what Jesus Christ prophesied and predicted would happen. He says, they're going to hate you as much as they hated me. And so when we are constantly being opposed by the world, we need each other more now than ever. We need that loyalty, that when we know the world's already going to be attacking us, we don't need to be attacking each other too. And that breaks my heart to see in churches where you can see brothers and sisters of Christ stabbing each other in the back. And there's no loyalty amongst God's own children. Church should be the last place to expect someone to betray you. And the last place you'd expect someone to hurt you and to take you down. Hey, unfortunately, we know it still happens. It happened to Jesus Christ by one of his 12 disciples, Judas Iscariot. It's going to happen. So really, the best course of action is this. We need to determine to be the selfless friend. See, that's kind of the plot twist here in that I just gave you a bunch of principles of what a selfless, good friend looks like. And all of us are like, yes, I want that in a friend. I want somebody who's going to be loyal to me. I want somebody who's going to make me a better person. I want somebody who's going to forgive me in my failures. I want somebody who's going to love me through the hard times. I want somebody who's going to initiate the friendship. We all crave that for ourselves. But if we're only looking for that for ourselves, what are we? Selfish, right? We need to be the selfless friend. I need to be the selfless friend. You need to be the selfless friend. Instead of us constantly looking for that person that fits the perfect description of what the Bible describes as a good, selfless friend, we need to be that person. That's really what Proverbs 18:24 is talking about. He that hath friends must show himself friendly. You know it's not just talking about just being a friendly, bubbly person. The Bible's describing someone who follows these biblical principles of friendship. The person in this room that has the deepest, most meaningful friendships is the person who follows God's teachings on friendship. You and I, if you're in this room right now, maybe you're one of those people that's been craving better friendships, start following these principles. Maybe you have a lot of friendships, but your friendships are really shallow. Follow these principles and live them out in your own life. Maybe you're pretty content because you actually have your circle of friends and you've got people that have been in your life for a long time. You're good. Maybe God right now is compelling you to be a better friend to someone else you didn't expect to be friends with. Because I get like that myself. Well, I got my friends. I'm good. I'm comfortable. I have my people. And I can kind of revert to that selfish nature of, I'm good. I don't need anyone else. But sometimes then God has to remind me, you might be good, but that person needs you. And maybe there's someone right now, they need you to be their friend. They need you to love on them a little bit. They need you to step up and encourage them because they are going through it right now. They're overwhelmed, they're defeated, they're alone, and they just need a selfless friend. So I would encourage you as we close, we're out of time, would you just pray that God would help you be a more selfless friend? Pray that God would allow you the opportunity to be the friend someone else might need. And I would even encourage you, pray about somebody in our church. Maybe there's somebody in our church that they've just been looking. I don't know if you've noticed on Sunday mornings, of course with Christmas, we had a lot of people out of time, but on Sunday mornings, we've got an auditorium full of people. And they haven't quite connected yet. Maybe it's just because they're waiting on you to love on them, to be there for them, to encourage them, to sharpen them. Maybe they just need a selfless friend. And maybe God gave us this message tonight because he wants everyone in this room to take that initiative, to take that next step of difference, right? Well, I hope that you'll carry this with you, and I hope that you'll allow this to affect your relationships and your interactions with people throughout the week at work, for the young people at school, for us this Sunday when we come back to church, that we would be selfless friends. Let's close in prayer, and we'll be dismissed. Dear Father.